we own one of the everything full blown every bundles, and I'm thinking we may have to get a second because we're so busy these days. So that's a good testament to like how important the Kronos stuff is to us.
You were talking a little bit about, the tools that you have in front of you, and the way they help you shape your creative vision, and the fact that sound is becoming as immersive as possible, and the industry is definitely going towards that direction. Talking about workflow, can you tell us a little bit how you use Kronos plugins to this extent? And if you, I don't know how much you can say, especially about this, the project that you're working on at the moment. But if you give us, specific use cases, that would be really fantastic.
I think we're in such an exciting time for what's happening with audio technology. And it's just, what we're able to do on so many fronts is kind of mind boggling. And we really try to embrace it as much as we can. Yeah, Kronos software is a great part of that. I have a pretty long history with the kind of, as a designer, working with some of the kind of conceptual techniques that Kronos software is kind of, in a way, packaged in the really simpler and easier to use form that means that we can get out of the kind of underpinnings of the technology to just get the work done. There's been a kind of steady stream of software, and Kronos is kind of now, they've taken it to the next level with Reformer and with the Humanizer. In more practical ways, we're using Reformer to, texture Foley. We're getting ready to, in Cabrini, we have scenes where you have a vast expanse. It's takes place in kind of turn of the last century New York City, and you'll have scenes where there's like 100 extras off in the distance walking around through these like muddy streets, and so one of the cool things with Reformer is we can actually just texture, add mud, add these sounds to the feet. So it lets us, we can create so much through Foley, and then they can start to differentiate and texturize it in post, which is really powerful. I saw the sound designer that did Batman talking about doing that with, like, on the stage, you can add a little bit of grit to the boots without going back to the Foley artist. Things like that are just incredible. But beyond Reformer and Dehumanizer we use all the time. I did a movie that came out during the pandemic called What Lies Below, and it's like it ends up being a creature movie, but we were able to like use Dehumanizer to make some incredible sound. And again, it's so easy when, specifically a movie like that, which is a fairly low budget movie, it's one thing when you have like a giant budget where you can spend a lot of time, iterating and trying things and recording. A lot of the movies we do are on the lower end of the budgets. And so, being able to quickly shape something and not spend days working on it is really important. And I think that's just the reality of a lot of the movies that are getting made today. So, being able to work quickly and in real time is important. Though we're doing another movie right now called Supercell. It's like a storm chasing movie. We're using Igniter for wheel sounds. We're using Igniter for engine work. And again, it's like this is a lower budget movie, but it has a lot of driving and action sequences. So it's something we can actually, it's very much in the world. To me, when I'm working with Igniter or working with any of those products, it's that, being able to kind of really work in real time. To me, it equates a lot to even like trying to cut Foley out of a library versus cutting Foley, or shooting Foley. It's just so much more efficient. And it's the same when using a product like Igniter, because it's like, it's all there and you can be kind of shaping something. And once you've kind of created, ultimately your instrument for what the vehicle sounds like, you can really start to cover a lot of ground very quickly and end up with a result that oftentimes is just better than what you would have otherwise. We have another movie we just did. It's kind of still, it's not finished yet for Universal, but it has a lot of. I probably shouldn't say the name of the movie, but it has a lot of robots in it. It has and a great example of that was that we needed there's a moment where a character like jumps in a Prius and it drives away, and it was like we didn't even have any Prius sounds in the library. We went in Igniter. It's like, oh yeah, of course, there's a Prius in Igniter. Perfect, you know. So it's like also like the way that they're constantly bringing new material is awesome. So you know, we own one of the everything full blown every bundles, and I'm thinking we may have to get a second because we're so busy these days. A lot of times we're working, you know, we need to be using Niter in two rooms at once. So that's a good testament to like how important the Krotos stuff is to us. And I, you know, shout out to Krotos. That's like it's a kind of integral day-to-day part of what we're doing as sound designers. So, you know, keep up the good work.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.